Welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I believe in some places this is week 4, week 5 of your school year. So hopefully all is going well. We're back again to Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. Last episode got some great feedback. So hopefully you're still watching. Do send in your comments, your questions. We'll take care of all that. What are we talking about today? By the way, I don't know where most of you are. It's a little chilly where we are today, but it doesn't stop us from Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. Today we're talking about college student concerns. So I already had my top 10. As you all know, I always do a top 10. I had my top 10 list of college student concerns. But now I know you're all talking about AI, right? So I said, okay, let me actually check what AI has for its top 10 list. And I must agree that for once, I actually agreed with AI on what is on their top 10, which is financial burden. Okay. So AI says, based on a study done in January 2022, for college students, financial burden is number 1. Academic pressure is also on top of that list. Mental health, job market and future employment, diversity and inclusion. Surprise, surprise, COVID-19 is also still on that list. Social life and relationships, housing, living expenses. So those are AI's top, what was that, 8 list. Okay. But as I mentioned, number 1 is financial burden, which is always my top, number 1 too. So today's topic is going to be tackling financial burden as college students. That's our topic for today. Why is this a big topic? Well, as we know, if your finances are not there, it actually can lead to a financial stress. And where's that all coming from? It could be balancing the cost of your tuition, your textbooks, your housing, other living expenses, and unfortunately, a lot of wants that you probably don't need in your life, but that also becomes your part of the stress that you have to go through, or it puts pressure or added stress on your financial burden. The impact for that, right? There's always going to be an impact. When you're having financial stresses, of course, the very first thing that's going to happen is your anxiety increases. Who goes to bed at night well, not knowing how they're going to pay for their food, not having a textbook, right? All those could start building up. And sadly, that is going to reduce your academic performance because you're going to be in the classroom trying to study, but still thinking about how am I going to be paying those bills? So it is going to affect sometimes your academic performance. And sadly, that can lead to your potential dropout. You get out of school. And we'll get into some numbers on that. Okay. I've always suggested that we balance work. Well, let me take that back. I've always said, as a college student getting ready for the real world, you need to get some kind of working experience. And the best way to start is, of course, finding some work on campus. Every time I do encourage students to find work to do to kind of pay some of the bills. However, I also have to make it very clear that there shouldn't be any point where your work priorities or your work becomes more than your academic activities. Okay? So that means you're not working more than your academics. On an average, usually I say 15 hours a week to help pay the bills, that's good. If you are, however, working more than you're supposed to be studying, then that also now becomes a problem. And the impact, of course, is just going to be, as I stated before, and additionally, now you're losing on the college experience, all the extra curricular activities that you could be involved in, your personal development goes out of the way because all you're doing is working so much, and the little time you have now falls on the academics, and you're probably going to lose out on that whole educational college experience. Okay. Usually, as you all know, even with a math degree, yes, I do have a math degree, I don't like doing the numbers. My thing has always been, if I'm telling you that don't do this, don't do that, I shouldn't prove that with any numbers, right? Statistics. But sometimes you have no choice because we trust so much in the numbers and we believe in the numbers. So every now and then, I do pull out some numbers, and I want to share some with you today. As we're looking at the financial landscape, okay, how this affects students. If you've heard of Think Impact is actually one of those resources that provides some of the best statistics when it comes to college. So yeah, this data is from Think Impact. And here are some of the data. Only 41% of college students graduate in 4 years or less. Now, I've always said, it's not a race. Take your time, go to college, balance work, go through it. So yes, if you don't graduate in 4 years, I have no problem with that, okay? But again, that is the statistics for 41% of college students graduating. But again, I think the statistics is also based on the challenges students have, and unfortunately that leads them or doesn't allow them to graduate, not necessarily still being in school, okay? Just 44%, however, graduate in 6 years. So that percentage difference is not much. 30% of enrolled students drop out in the first year. And there has been many reasons why this happens or why some of these numbers are so alarming. Students will drop out for a variety of reasons, including feeling like they're not fitting in socially, family doesn't support them, poor grades, of course, health and mental health issues, and of course, some are either homesick and like, this is not the place for me. However, what do you think is the biggest reason for these low percentages? You probably have guessed it. The biggest cause is financial. Yes. And because of the financial burden, just over 2/3 of students who drop out of college do so because of money, while 79% of delayed graduations are due to financial difficulties. So you want the numbers? You got the numbers. Let's get right into my top 10 on how to reduce financial burden while in college. I'm going to go through this very quickly, but I need you to please listen, take notes, go back and watch this. Because I honestly believe if you can stick to these 10 points, not to say you're not going to have any financial burden, but I guarantee you most of your financial burden will not be an issue. My number one is create a budget. I'll be honest with you, I never did. I never created a budget until I got to grad school, and I'll explain why. Because during undergrad, there was one thing that was very, very clear to me. One being, I always remember the sacrifices my parents have to make for me to get to college overseas. All the way from West Africa to the United States, going to college. I knew it was a great opportunity, and I always kept that in mind. So, I'm always thinking about being smart with my money. If I didn't have it, I didn't spend it. That doesn't mean I wasn't spending money anyway, but I always knew that I had to save some money. So again, unintentionally, maybe I created a budget, but I never really created a budget until, again, I got to grad school where I had my own apartment. This time I was not in the dorm. I didn't have a meal plan. I had a car. I had to pay insurance. So all the stuff is adding up. I needed to know how much money I was getting from my assistantship, how much money I was getting from tutoring, and also how I was paying for my apartments, my phone, you name it. So I had to create a budget. Start early and you'll be good. Number 2, financial aid and scholarships. Why college students miss out on this opportunity still beats me. I still don't get it. I push and push and push and push. I've always said, these are easy, free money, get them. So what if you have to write an essay? So what do you have to meet a deadline? That is all that it takes. And I can't tell you how many institutions have so much money in scholarships that are not given to students. So what if you have to write a thank you note at the end of the semester to say, thank you for the scholarship? It's worth it. Please, please, please take advantage of any financial aid and scholarship. Fellowship is not added in here because usually fellowship comes with grad school, but so far as scholarship goes, there are a lot of them. So please take advantage of that. Number 3, part-time employment. You've probably heard me say this before, and I'll repeat it over and over again. You have to work while you're going to college, and please put ego aside. Why do I always stress ego? Because I worked in the kitchen, I worked at the cafeteria while I was in college. It was great. I paid fees, I was able to make some money, get some money to buy my textbooks. I got some more money to pay for other expenses. So why wouldn't you? Why is working in the kitchen a degrading factor? If your boyfriend or girlfriend is going to think that you working in the college doesn't qualify you as a dating material, then I'm sorry, but that's not what you're in college for. And we'll get on into that topic in a whole different session, episode, okay? Get a part-time employment. Again, my suggestion with part-time employment is making sure that you're balancing your academics and where you're working, all right? But workplace, the library, again, those tend to be some decent, quote-unquote, decent job. But find the work, do it. Don't worry about what it is. So far as it's on campus and it's legal and it's going to pay you, do that. Number 4, live frugal or live frugally. What do I mean? Usually when I say frugal, students are thinking cheap. And there's nothing wrong with cheap. I say live cheap but smart. Okay? That means you're not starving yourself. And there's nothing wrong with the ramen noodles. But again, don't do it 5 days a week. Balance it up. Get a meal plan. Most institutions have meal plans, so what if they repeat some of the food items? They're still great. In between that, you could do your grocery shopping, do your own cooking. All right, that's also, but be very, very smart. Again, live cheap, and if it so happens that you have to get an apartment, find a roommate. That's half the cost of that as well. Most institutions have dorms or dormitories on campus. That is also very affordable. Well, these days there's some 5-star dormitories on some campuses. I'm not saying go in for those ones, but they are reasonable housing that campus or your college provide. So be very smart when it comes to those. Okay. Number 5, textbook. Yeah. Textbooks were not cheap when I was a student, and they're never going to get cheap. So you're looking at a couple of $100 for your textbook. Fortunately for you, these days, you do have electronic textbooks. Never in my time. In my time, you got to get a used textbook, and it was okay, and it worked. Now you do have electronic copies, so take advantage of that. Also, I've been told you can actually rent your textbooks. If it's a textbook that you don't need in your major, right? Yes, you can rent it and let it go because you're not going to go back and reference it. That's a very good strategy. Almost every textbooks your instructors, your professors, your teachers are going to use or recommend that you use for research, guess what? Will be in the library. sometimes multiple copies. So there's nothing wrong with checking some of those textbooks out, using them for a couple of weeks, taking it back so somebody else could get it. But at least it's a good way to start. If your friends have textbooks that you can share with them, when they're not using, you can borrow it. Photocopy the section where it has all the homework problems. Okay, I'm not saying photocopy the whole textbook. Now we run into a whole lot of copyright issues. That's not what we're doing here. But be very smart about that. So yes, textbooks are so expensive, so they're always looking for alternatives for your textbooks. Number 6, financial literacy education. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about money management. Never existed when I was in college as well. Now most institutions have offices, okay? Offices that you can sign up, or they have seminars that they're giving to students every time on how to budget money, how to invest money, and how to manage your debt. Free consultation, may I add. So please take advantage of that. 1 hour, go sit down with a financial money management advisor, free, again on campus. They're gonna ask you some basic questions. How much money do you make? Where are you working? There's the money that comes in. Okay, how are we spending that money? And they help you tremendously. Take advantage of that, please. Okay? All right. Number 7. I already touched on this here a little bit, but again, the number 1 ways in which students spend money is food. Okay. Yes. Food is the number 1, and unfortunately, a lot of fast food too. A lot of fast food, which results in a lot of fast money. Okay? I did a section with Miss Wendy, who was a nutritionist, and told us all about some of the strategies, how to plan your meal, how to save on food, how to prepare meals and use leftovers for lunch the next day. Amazing. Go back and check that episode out. It's actually one of my best episodes. I think it's in 2 sections, as a matter of fact, because we prepared some breakfast, and then we looked at some lunch, and we looked at some dinner ideas as well. Okay? If you have a meal plan that is provided, again, by the school, has a little meal plan. Sometimes the food is very affordable, so you could do that. But as a student, you got to be very smart about how you prepare food. Think about your carbohydrates. I always start with that, right? What are they going to be? Maybe rice, potatoes, macaroni, spaghetti, beans, and then just adding some proteins. You got 5 days a week. And yes, if you want to mix it up with food from the cafeteria, usually I say, breakfast, lunch, you want to do from the cafeteria, very smart, dinner, eat home. But again, be very smart about your meal plan, because that's where we spend most of our money on. Number 8 is to have an emergency fund. Emergency fund became something that we think it was just for adults. And yes, maybe so, because we have a house, you have a car, something happens, you need to have an emergency fund to take care of that. However, as a student, I'm not asking you to do too much. A couple of $100, $200, $500, where you can't touch, right? So again, hence emergency. That means, hey, I lost my meal plan card. I'm not finding any friend to get me food. You have the money. You could go in there, get some $20, use it. Okay, your car breaks down, you got to fix it. You need money quick to fix it. $200, you have that money. Little things like that. So emergency fund, again, very, very critical. If you could do that, that's great. Something I never really thought of, again, while I was in college. Okay. Number 9 is negotiating your bills. Negotiating your bills. As a student, there are a lot of incentives out there. Okay? Just like in the military, if you have a family member that's in the military, you can look at some of the advantages that they have. Same thing with students. You will be amazed. Everything you literally have to buy, there's nothing wrong with asking if there is a student discount to it. Your internet providers, some may have student discounts. If you're buying a phone, some may have discounts for students, okay? Utilities, internet, you just name it. Every one of this here, insurance for your car, if you're a student, AAA has student discounts. So take advantage of all this because every little bit adds up. Last but not the least, on my top 10, number 10 is avoid credit cards. I don't know how many times or why students think credit cards are actually free money. They're not. And I'm sure you all know that by now, okay? Credit cards are not free. Well, credit cards are free. The money that comes with the credit cards are never free. And unfortunately, students use it and don't pay it and think it's okay. Credit cards are not student loans where you can defer it until you graduate. No, 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 no. Credit cards don't work that way. Sadly, college students' credit card also has one of the worst interest rates because you probably cannot pay them back, okay? And also because you don't have a good credit score, so your credit cards are not going to have good interest rates. Whole different topic, whole different section that we can look at into later. But if you don't need to have a credit card, and I get it, sometimes students say, well, how do I build a credit score? Sure, get a credit card, use it for emergencies only, or pay it off immediately. And I know that is one of the biggest challenges students are going to face. Even adults sometimes don't have that discipline to pay off their credit card immediately when they use it. That means monthly paying off expenses that was paid using the credit card. Okay. I do guarantee you, if you go through my top 10 list, I'm not going to say it's going to wipe up all your financial burdens, but I do guarantee you 90% that you'll be okay financially while you're in college. You're going to graduate clean, nice, without any financial burden, without any financial stress. And sadly, as I mentioned, with the financial stress comes every downfall that you can think of. Because it's money. It's a resource that makes everything right. Okay? So, again, as I mentioned, be very smart. Go through the top 10 list right off my head. I talk about creating a budget. It's always very good to know how much you're making, how much you're spending. I do always want to close with, while you're in college and while we're talking about financial stress, the emphasis is not just making money, it's just making enough to get you through, but not to become your priority, okay? Prioritize still your academics, but we're trying to see how to lessen the stresses so then your academic performance will be good. With that, I hope you enjoy my top 10 list. I hope we tackle some of the financial stresses. I'm looking forward to the next edition. I'm going to go back to look at the second college student consent that AI also has on its list. I think it's a good one, and we'll use that for the next episode. So until next time, thanks again for tuning in to Let's Talk Ed with Professor Chris. Continue enjoying the rest of the semester. Study hard. Keep on your academics. Focus on your needs and not your wants when it comes to money. All right. Have a great time.